Ciao friends! I want to show how to read the partition size information using DAX Studio. I have my DAX Studio instance connected to a large database that has a big table with 4 billion rows. As you can imagine, this table is split in several partitions, and sometimes it could be useful to understand how the data is distributed across the partitions. A new feature of VertiPaq Analyzer included in DAX Studio, specifically since the version 2.11 of DAX Studio, includes additional information for the partition, which is what I want to show you today. So I already connected DAX Studio to my model, and I click on View Matrix in order to show here the VertiPaq Analyzer matrix pane. As you see in the tables, I can already evaluate that I have a very big table here that has 4 billion rows and 17 gigabytes of data. I can increase the size, I can zoom this pane a little bit, and I can drill down here and I can see that the data is distributed across different columns, however, every column has the same number of segments and partitions in the table. We have 517 segments and 59 partitions for each column. How the data is distributed across these partitions, this is an information that now we can see in this Partitions tab. Here we have, for every table, the list of the partitions that is included in the table. So if I drill down Audience here, I can see one row for each partition with the name of the partition we have in the model. And for each partition, we have the number of rows and the size of the data stored in the columns for this partition. Remember, the total amount of data for the partitions is just the amount of data for the columns. It doesn't include additional information that is stored at the table level, like relationships, dictionary, or hash table. So here we can see that every partition here has, of course, just one partition, because we have 59 partitions at the table level, but every row is only one partition. But we can see how many segments we have for every partition, which is an interesting information, because if we have a very large number of partitions with just one segment, maybe under the threshold for the segment of your database, in this case the threshold is 8 million rows for analysis services, but it is only 1 million rows for Power BI, then the distribution of the data across your partitions is not ideal and could have an overhead in performance. So it's always better to have at least 2, 3, 4 segments in every partition, with just one exception. If you have empty partitions like we have at the end, we can live with that, because an empty partition is relatively very small cost at query time, so I don't worry too much about the empty partition. What I'm concerned about is an uneven distribution of the data across the partition, especially when you have just one segment with a very small amount of data. So this is another information that VertiPaq Analyzer can provide you through DAX Studio. Enjoy DAX!